What was the most shocking thing you heard the quiet kid say? We were chillin' at a bar in Prague and someone rolled up some hash oil and tobacco and passed it around. The quiet kid hid it and got even quieter. 20 minutes later some aggressive, growling black metal comes on and out of nowhere he yells, "Kill your parents." We duck and lost it. He was pretty happy with himself. The day I decided to not say stupid things was a very important day in my life. Before I knew it, I just didn't talk anymore. I'm the quiet kid. One day, before my economics class started, this guy turned around in his desk and asked me what I thought he'd be when he grew up. He never took anything seriously and joked around a lot. So I answered, "Definitely a porn star." The girl next to me started laughing really hard, and even when class started, she didn't stop. The teacher walked over to her and asked her what she was laughing about. When she finally calmed down enough to answer, she said, "So Lucifer said that Daniel's gonna be a porn star." And the whole class heard it. Everybody, including my teacher, was staring at me with shocked looks on their faces. I turned bright red and couldn't find any valid excuse for what I'd said, and that's why I never talk. I wasn't there, but in my announcing techniques class teaches you how to present yourself and speak for radio television. We were filming how to videos in the studio, and the professor was telling us past examples of good and bad projects. One in particular was done by a very shy, awkward kid who came to the studio with a friend and a metal box. He so casually proceeds to pull a bunch of knives out of the box and film his video on the best ways to use the knives in combat with very specific and effective ways to kill somebody using his friend as a dummy. He was very volatile with his movements, and his friend apparently didn't even bat an eye. The professor then explained that despite how uncomfortable it made him and the rest of the class, he had to give him an A because his presentation was actually put together pretty well. Quiet kid sneezes. Boy behind her, God bless you. Her God isn't real. An annoying friend. Dylan, quiet kid, you're so ducking stupid sometimes. Dylan, at least I don't suck maths at all the time. Someone once turned to me and said, "Dude, you're always so quiet. Like a serial killer or something." I immediately responded, "Thank you." Looks of shock and horror as I realized what I said. In college, our fraternity had a pledge who was clearly awkward with girls, but was otherwise a real cool guy. Normally, Dan was super proper and a bit shy when talking to girls, but not this night. On this night, when Dan was asked about what kind of girl he wanted to date, he told our sweetheart the kind of girl who loves to have her PSSY crushed. I'm not sure if Dan ever crushed any PSSY, but that line became a staple in our frat for a while. I will never forget this. As long as I live, it was like perfect cinema in real life. This quiet, weird girl in 10th or 11th grade always wore this giant coat and looked messy. She was a bigger girl and had a sister who was super pretty and skinny and popular. As I type this out, I realize it sounds fake or like a move. Anyway, this big, awkward, quiet, friendless girl shows up at a talent show at the school. People weren't being obviously mean, but there was definitely an air of WTF when she came out on stage in her big messy coat and disheveled clothes. She sat at the piano and started to play and sing, and just, my god, it was surreal. She sang this haunting bluesy song no one had ever heard before, and the auditorium just went dead silent. I distinctly remember tearing up, and I'm tearing up now 20 years later just remembering it. Who the heck knew? In middle school, the quiet kid, Steven, had an arch rival, Robbie. In class, Robbie always seemed to come out on top of their little scuffles. Mostly because Steven couldn't really formulate or execute a burn or a comeback. He just rolled over and let Robbie get his insult in until the teacher stepped in. One day I was walking behind Robbie after that class and Steven quietly crept up behind him. Before Robbie could even turn around, he got as close as possible and said, "If I was to come into your house and kill you while you were sleeping, I doubt anyone would even notice." Then he disappeared into the darkness of the science hallway. I don't remember the exact words, but that was pretty damn close. I was about 55% shocked, 30% laughing hysterically on the inside, and 15% terrified. Robbie never made fun of old Stevie again. A group of dudabras in my high school were talking about sexy women in class, and for fun they asked the quiet kid what kind of girls he likes. He says very seriously, dogs. Dudabras, haha, you're kidding. Quiet kid, no, I'm serious. He never spoke again. 2 weekends ago during a rugby tournament my team got in a scrap because someone on the other team called a black person on my team a N-word. This kid, let's call him Jake, had maybe said 10 words all season. He's pretty large and awkward, but he's a beast in rugby. Anyway, after the N-word went out he screamed "duck you" and punched the kid who said the N-word in the face and broke his nose. It was the best day ever and now he is super chill and actually talks. On a scale of 1 to Pearl Harbor, how panicked should we be? I was a substitute teacher for a year after college. There was a 7th grade girl that all the other girls adored. At the age of 13, she was already a fake tan cheerleader and thought the world of herself and cared little for her classmates. One day, in study hall, she was bragging, lying to her friends about her string of boyfriends. The other girls were hanging on to every word she said. We will call her Cordelia. Now, to set the necessary geography of this scene, there was a very quiet boy at the computer in the back of the classroom. He hadn't said a word all period. Anyway, Cordelia, I just wanna date a boy that's dumber than me. That way, he'd do whatever I want, because all he wants is you nows. Boy Cordelia, if you were dating anyone dumber than you would be pushing him around in a wheelchair and wiping drool off his face. Immediately, Cordelia looked at me, dumbfounded. She expected me to yell at him or send him to the office. No matter how hard I tried, I could not stop laughing. It was the most hysterical thing I'd heard all year. I went through high school with a really quiet girl. I wasn't close with her, but we were both in a more academic stream, so I had quite a few classes with her. She came across as a sweet girl who was just a bit shy or introverted. After high school ended, she posted a long note on Facebook about how she hated everyone in our high school and was so glad to be done. That she wasn't shy at all and was sick of people thinking she is the nice quiet girl, because if I didn't talk to you in high school it's because I ducking hated you. It was very surprising because she had seemed so sweet before. I still have her on Facebook and it's been 8 years. I never talked to her after that. My friend told me about how they were watching Little Shop of Horrors in their theater class. There was this one kid who nearly never said anything, but apparently during one of the scenes with tentacles or vines or something, I've never actually seen it myself, out of nowhere, this kid says to the class, "Well, I've seen enough ancient to know where this is going." My school teacher once told me about this incident where a mouse rat was spotted in the class and everyone was screaming and standing on their chairs, etc. But this one Eastern European kid who was just sitting in his chair looked and said, "Why is everyone shouting? I've seen my own uncle being shot in the face." It was Carl, the middle-aged Asian man, on the day he was graduating from our rehab program. We didn't even know it was his graduation day until he stood up to say his goodbye. We all got nervous because of all the things we'd been open about: molestation, violence, the worst things that had happened to us, and the worst things we'd done. This diminutive man in thick glasses had literally never said a word. It was something like, "I feel like each and every one of you is my family. No one has ever understood my pain and my struggle the way you people do. I love all of you. I mean that. I love all of you so much. Thank you for everything." Blew my 22-year-old mind right out the front of my face. I have never since doubted that the quiet ones are participating in their way as much as the rest of us. As a couple of girls from a few school years beneath us walked in the room, the lads behind us were discussing which one they'd like to duck. My mate turned round and questioned how they could find children attractive. Neither had an answer, but the quiet, almost silent, Lad in the back corner weighed in with "There's nothing like fresh meat." I was the quiet kid. I go to a private school, so there's a fair share of spoiled, privileged kids. In any case, while most people are pretty nice, there's a lot of complaining. Anyways, I was in English class, which is one of my favorites, except that I don't really have any friends in the class. I had trained myself to not say anything, because when I did I was usually met with groans and a chorus of "you reclaiming for Brewer is doing it again." The teacher was a nice, young, pretty English major, who had also gone to a private school, so she was used to well-behaved kids. To her delight, my class is that. The only negative quality about most of the students is, like I said, complaining about completely inane things. Somewhat early in the year, when she was still under the impression that we were all well-behaved, uniform young men and women, during a quiz a random girl decided to start whining about analogies. Understand, this is the kind of class where talking during quizzes is socially acceptable, because it's understood that no one's cheating or dumb enough to cheat by straight up asking people the answer. I had gotten pretty sick of the complaining, so after she finished her rant about analogies, I pulled out an old line from Dave Berry, thus ruining my class's state of grace forever, and that's why I started doing heroin. At the time I thought that would be pretty hilarious, but instead the class just stared at me, and the shocked teacher couldn't seem to find the words to say. No one in the class really knew me well, so they had no reason to believe I was joking. For the rest of the year, no one complained about analogies. So there is this one kid I know, who is very quiet. He almost never talks, but when he does people listen. He always looks very calm. But I heard a story about him once. He was on the baseball team in high school, and one game just about everything had gone wrong for him. He had been hard by several pitches, had a hard time in the field, and basically just had a crappy game. His last at bat, he strikes out. He walks into the dugout, then pulls off his helmet and chucks it as hard as he can. He picks up his bat and just starts going ham on everything in the dugout, splintering benches, smashing water coolers, denting metal support poles, everything. Meanwhile everyone else is just in shock, basically trying to stay out of the way, because he isn't paying attention to what he's hitting. Finally he calms down, but I sure don't want to ever make him mad. I was the quiet kid in this scenario. I'm a skinny, white kid and I was working at Jimmy John's with a bunch of outgoing and loud black kids. While we were closing, I was doing the dishes and everyone else was doing their jobs. When we would close, they would blare rap music through the restaurant speakers. They would always rap the words and be really loud during the songs. So during one of the songs, when it got quiet, I just yelled at the top of my lungs, "WOOOO, this is my shit." And then I just went back to doing the dishes. Everyone looked at me as if I had lobsters crawling out of my ears. Not the quiet kid, but my grandmother, the most soft-spoken, quiet, go with the flow type person. My grandfather was a jerk and clinically depressed. She was always doing absolutely everything for him without saying a single word. So the day before Thanksgiving about 7 years ago, my grandma woke up at like 5 AM feeling really dizzy. She has diabetes and her sugar was low, and she slept upstairs, since my grandpa insisted he get the downstairs bedroom for no good reason other than laziness. So she went to walk downstairs to get juice, and she lost her balance at the top of the stairs, and fell face first down a full set of wooden stairs, knocked out all her teeth, broke her jaw, broke part of her neck and both of her wrists. She was life-starved to the hospital, where she was in critical condition for a while, and had her jaw wired shut for the better part of a month. Christmas Eve the whole family went to her hospital room for the holiday, and brought all the presents. My grandfather waits until the very end, and then dramatically takes a small bag out of the inside pocket of his jacket, and tells her it's her gift. Since her jaw had been wired shut, she literally hadn't said a single word for a month. So she opens the bag and it's a car key for a brand new car. With all the family around and watching, she speaks for the first time and says, "This isn't for me, it's for you. All I want is for you to appreciate me." We were all in such shock. No one had ever heard her say anything like that. My grandfather cried for 2 days straight. He didn't change though, and then he died 4 years later. What was the most shocking thing you heard the quiet kid say? In class he asked the woman teacher if he could go to the toilet. She sternly replied, "You've got 2 minutes. Richard," and Richard says, "2 minutes. It takes me that long to unravel it." Teacher goes red and everyone loses it. That kid is an absolute legend. Richard for president. We were having a bullshit elective course and we ran out of stuff to do, so we wound up having story time. My friend walks up to the front and starts telling us about how he once got pretty badly injured. Basically he was walking into his friend's house, slipped on some black ice, planted on it, and his front teeth tore off most of his front lip and broke off. He ran into the house babbling and bleeding. He was like 11 and was missing part of his face, so he wasn't 100% coherent at the time, and his friend's mom takes one look, runs into her bedroom, locks the door, and doesn't do anything until my friend's dad arrives and starts screaming at her. My friend says he still has no idea why the grown adult woman couldn't handle the situation any better, and we all start making guesses and bullshit psychoanalysis. Cue the quiet kid raising his magnificent head and blessing us with enlightenment. Maybe she just needed to F herself real quick. So this one kid, who barely ever said 2 words, one day asks the teacher for the time. It was at some after school thing and there was no clock. The teacher says the classic time for you to get a watch, which for some reason was funny to everyone else. The quiet kid doesn't laugh. He looks the teacher dead in the eyes, and once everyone quieted down, he says, "So are you gonna tell me the ducking time? Or what?" We were in like 7th grade. In class we were studying genetics, and one guy was being a real douche and the teacher couldn't get him to shut up. Then after discussing inbreeding in dogs, one quiet kid raises his hand and says, "So is this likely how Peter Douche became so ducking retarded? What if we killed everyone with cancer to stop it from spreading?" This douchebag kid who constantly ducked with people was in line with the quiet kid and the quiet kid's friend. The quiet kid is a bit overweight, so when he gets up to the lunch lady and gets his chicken nuggets, the douchebag says, "You don't want extra nuggets, big guy." The quiet kid out of nowhere just starts ranting, "No, I'm all set, but what are you up to this weekend? You wanna hang out, grab some food, maybe duck a bit? I like to be on top and you look like a bottom. What do you say, wanna duck tonight?" The entire line is dead silent. The douchebag starts getting all pissed off and acting like has gonna start a fight, and the quiet kid says, "Okay fine, you can be top, baby." The douchebag kid leaves to the entire line laughing their asses off at his expense. No idea if the quiet kid was gay or he just knew that even jokingly suggesting the douche kid was a homosexual would upset him more than anything. But I do know he left the line with his delicious chicken nuggets and a huge smile on his face. Quiet guy I work with never said much until he came up to me and asked what happens when an Eskimo comes. Before I get the chance to respond, he throws a handful of ice at me and walks away. In junior high in the mid-80s, the game Trivial Pursuit was all the rage. We played it in math class one day and this kid, Gary, who never said anything at all, totally spanked everyone else by answering every single sports-related trivia question. He got a lot of attention for it, and I believe he walked a little taller after that day. I don't think I ever heard him say anything else, but I did see him sitting on the bleachers at a few sports events. At school, having just shown me the scope for a supposedly his sniper rifle, "If the fire alarm ever goes off and you can't find me, don't use the doors as an exit." Well, he was nice enough to warn you. The quiet kid from my grade stood up one day, grabbed a broom, stood on a chair, and began trying to swat bees that got inside. One bee landed on the window where quiet kid proceeded to yell, "Die bee die," and then swatted and shattered the window. He screeched when it happened and then sat back down. Never heard him speak again. One of my students hardly said a word all year until a couple weeks ago. I was trying to get a group of talkative ones under control, and she had enough. She yells out, "Shut the duck up. I'm trying to work, you ducking a-holes." Awkward silence followed because I didn't know how to handle the normally studious and quiet one losing it. I was best friends with the quiet kid in middle school. It wasn't so much shocking as the stupidest thing I've heard him say. He got this 1,000-yard stare all of a sudden and just said, "I can't remember what color my dog is." Similar to a friend of mine the thing about rainies, that it makes mud. I had my friend say, "Man, everything happens so much, you know." Well really bud, you don't say. My dad is very quiet, to the point that it makes most people uncomfortable. Even me sometimes. One day, we're at the park and a woman walks past us, and my dad quickly says, "What if I punch that woman in the face?" and said, "Sorry, I thought you were my wife." In high school, there was this really quiet girl named Grace. She was a pleasant person, but wouldn't say anything more than hi or sorry unless you asked her something. Even then, she'd appear terrified. It was at prom, and I was in the parking lot of the venue we had prom at. I lost her contact and had to run to my car to grab my glasses. In the parking lot, Grace was smiling and walking from her car. She looked at me, laughed, and said Ryan, her prom date just fingered the duck out of me. I still laugh about it to this day. He started to attack someone in my class with a table when the teacher got a cup of coffee. That was quite something. I was in marching band in HS, probably 7 years ago now, and we had this huge muscular guy as our brass instructor. He would always yell at us to nail these chords or you're not playing loud enough. There was this little Asian trumpet kid that was so innocent and nice he barely ever spoke a word. One really hot afternoon, our instructor was being especially loud and said, "Why don't the trumpets blow hard enough?" Dead silence across the field as all the brass are waiting for next instructions. Then we hear, "Why doesn't your mom blow this hard enough?" from quiet trumpet kid. Needless to say, we all laughed, got push-ups, and laughed some more. 72 virgins is nowhere near enough virgins for eternity. That's like a week's worth of virgins. I went to middle school and high school with this boy named Daniel. Never once heard him say a word. A friend of mine said he would whisper sometimes. The night of our senior party we heard some music coming over from the corner where the karaoke machine was set up. At first no one really noticed him because people had been singing on it all night and most people stopped paying attention. But this was different cause no one was singing and the music was playing. The DJ stopped the music and started the song again. Daniel was standing there looking frightened, but this time around, when the song started he began to sing. Everyone in the room stopped what they were doing and just crowded around him. He wasn't a great singer by any means, but 99% of the people in the room hadn't ever heard him talk. When the song was over everyone started clapping and cheering, and he walked away with a big smile on his face. In kindergarten, there was this kid, Donatel, and he never said a word. He was nice enough, played games and everything, but completely silent. One day we were looking out the classroom window as a cop drove by. Donatel opens his mouth and says police car. At the time, we were all excited to hear him speak, but looking back, that kid must have had some real dark history. In high school, I had first level Spanish with this kid, who was super quiet. At the end of the year, we all had to give a speech in Spanish in front of the entire class. This Methodicus stood up and gave a speech, not in Spanish, but in a language that he had spent the entire year inventing. Kid, I've never heard you say anything loudly. You need to shout something out. Quiet kid, what? Kid, shout something. In the middle of a classroom, a full blow high-pitched roar is heard. Quiet kid, Christmas. It was a Muslim kid who didn't even celebrate Christmas. What a dude. Playing rugby, hooker fails completely at line out. Someone shouts jokingly, "Does anyone know any good hookers to replace Patrick?" Quietest guy on the team. Never hear him say anything. Maybe Patrick's mum can help. Proceed to fall on floor. So this isn't so much what he said. The seniors played lock-up in ball with the underclassmen. It's exactly what it sounds like. They bounced one little guy constantly. Made him late for class a lot because they'd keep him bouncing so long. Well, one day they were bouncing him and he super politely said, "Please stop. You're hurting me." Obviously the seniors bounced him harder. Apparently that was this kid's breaking point because he leapt onto the nearest senior. We just happened to be our star basketball forward. The little freshman bit into the senior's neck and literally tore a mouthful of skin off. He just stood there with this piece of bloody skin on his shirt growling at everyone. Needless to say, no one ever ducked with Mad Dog Mike after that. My a-hole is this big while making a circle with her fingers. How big was the circle? This big? That big? Jeremy. This guy was so silent that we believed he was a mute. The school had just recently painted the bins in all kinds weird styles. As our group was walking somewhere at lunchtime, we passed a bin that was covered in handprints. He offhandedly goes, "That bin is handy," leaving us dumbfounded at his pun bomb. We sat in the classroom in I think 5th grade. My friend had done a PowerPoint presentation about Eminem. He talked about that he lived in a trailer as a young boy, and the quiet, straight A student stands up and says, "Just like you," and asks to use the toilet. No one understood anything of what just happened. We live in North Europe. It's practically no one that lives in a trailer here. My friend didn't. There was this one quiet girl in my class, and she would never say anything. This was around 3rd or 4th grade, but I would always try and get her to talk. I would be nice. Like when she had no paper in her binder, I'd take notice and give her some before she can ask. When she was searching for a pencil in her bag, I gave her an extra one I had. It was like small little acts. Picking up her pencil when she dropped it, etc. Then at lunch this kid was picking on me. I was short, weak, and very emotional back then. She came out of nowhere and told the guy, "I'll give you 3 seconds to walk away." I was stunned because those were the first words I've ever heard her say. The guy slapped me and she did a straight kick to his balls after that. I was honored and shocked she ever said anything. She never said anything after that, but I did say thanks. Too long didn't read 3rd grade. Quiet girl kicks my bully's balls after saying, "I'll give you 3 seconds to walk away." It was the only thing I ever heard her say. One thing I always say, as a quiet guy, is whenever people are talking about me within earshot, they usually say something like, "That mix master bone. He just never talks." Then I say, "No, but I hear everything." They all just kind of laugh awkwardly and slither away. I think it's weird how my lack of conversation is such a huge conversation starter. Our quiet kid was Tommy. Tommy never said anything ever. Out of all the lunches we ate at our table senior year, I think Tommy was the only one who never told a story or even added anything to the conversation. He just always sat in the same spot along the wall eating his lunch and laughing occasionally at our jokes. One day we were sitting in the cafeteria eating lunch and sharing stories like we always do. My friend Raymond had spent the previous night with a girl named Haley. She was 2 years younger, but already had a reputation of hooking up with a lot of different guys. So he was telling us everything that went down, kind of bragging, even though nobody was really impressed as we were aware of Haley's reputation. Anyways, Raymond gets done telling his story, then proceeds to pull out his sandwich. I think it was some sort of fish. It didn't look very appealing to Raymond or us, so he says, "This looks disgusting, but I'll give it a try anyways," and proceeds to take a bite. In pipes Tommy, "Is that what you said about Haley last night?" Everyone explodes into laughter, drawing the attention of the entire cafeteria. Raymond is just sitting there, mid-bite, stunned. I'm bent over in pain from laughing. Others are on the floor. One guy ran to the bathroom because he thought he was going to puke from laughing. Even Ray had to laugh. I never noticed him laugh, but Tommy had this sly grin on his face the rest of the lunch hour. Consider subscribing if you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more of Reddit Universe,